I'm always amazed at some of the things that people will do. Sometimes people do the dumbest things. I read in the news this week one that seemed to top the cake of about the dumbest thing I've heard anybody do in my lifetime. And maybe you saw it. It was in the Tampa Tribune. I read it this week. It was on the news. And it even made national news. A young man from Wyoming, 18 years old. And what he did was, he caught a 4-foot cottonmouth, a water moccasin. And he caught this snake there, and water moccasins, 4-footers, probably like that big, but they're really thick around the middle. And he caught a 4-foot water moccasin, and then he decided, I'm going to keep it. He threw it in a pillowcase and tied it up in a knot, and brought it into his bedroom. Any of you holding a water moccasin in your bed? No, probably not. And after he did it, and he was talking with his girlfriend. And we live in the age of YouTube videos. He thought, I have a 4-foot water moccasin. Nobody else has a 4-foot water moccasin. I'm going to kiss it and put it on YouTube. I'll be the viral sensation. And so he took the water moccasin out. I don't know if you could lead into it with some pillow talk or some, get the snake in the mood or whatever, or pucker up. Get ready. But he went in to kiss the water moccasin. And the kiss wasn't a French kiss. I don't know. The snake lapped onto his lip and bit him hard on the lip. The video showed he grabbed the snake and pulled it off his lip, threw it around, and then threw it down to the ground. But his face turned into maybe the Elephant Man look attractive. His face swole up like things, and he was teetering on a life and death situation. Because usually when people get bit by a snake, it's in the ankle or the foot, it's a long ways away from your brain or heart, but you get so much blood flow. His face turned this huge thing, and he almost died. But the interesting thing was, when the police found out what happened, they were thinking, well, after this guy gets better and if he gets out of the hospital, I think maybe we should arrest him for illegal possession of a cottonmouth without a permit. I guess if you're Busch Gardens or Lowry Park Zoo, you can have a cottonmouth, but you guys, we can't have cottonmouths. And I'm just amazed at how somebody would do that. And, the hospital bill, I know the Buckholzes, I know they know a woman in Wesley Chapel who got bit by a rattler going to the mailbox, I think last year, and I think the hospital bill, after everything, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And can you imagine that, just because you wanted to kiss a cottonmouth and make a great YouTube video? Shocking. But people do stupid things, and this is really about as dumb a thing as you can do, as I can imagine. But then when I was reading this article this week, it made me think of this passage from Isaiah chapter 11, which talks about animals in heaven. As I mentioned at the beginning of the service, we've been doing this the last Sunday of the month. We do sermons on questions you've asked me. And it was probably back in January or February, I got an email from one of the members of the church, and he asked me about certain questions about heaven. And I'm going to answer 4 of them today. Try to answer 4 of them as best as I can. And the first question that he asked me was, is my dog going to be with me in heaven? And you know what? For that, I cannot say yes or no. But the one thing is, it does make me think about animals in heaven. And you know what? When we get this passage from Isaiah chapter 11, it talks about animals in heaven. Every time in the Old Testament, when it uses this phrase, on God's holy mountain, on the sacred mountain, you're all of a sudden getting a vision of heaven. And it's unlike anything this world possesses. When you read this verse that Vicki read, where it talks about the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, and the calf and the lion, and the yearling together. The cow will feed with the bear, and the young will lie down together with the lion, will eat straw like the ox. And the infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child will put his hand in the viper's nest, and they will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain. You know what cottonmouths are? They're wipers. And you know what? You can't kiss a cottonmouth today, but in heaven, if you want to kiss a cottonmouth, go ahead. Probably never thought of that before, right? There's a smile. You're looking forward to trying that, right? Younger boys, that's, oh, I can play with snakes. But as you see the incredible creation of all the things and the animosity, and you know what? Sometimes these animals, bring you fear. I have to confess, the most afraid I've ever been in my whole life, this happened when I was 16 years old. I was up at my grandparents' up in northern Michigan, and I just got my license, and I love fishing, and I went to the Silver River, which is about 10 miles north of them, in the Upper Peninsula. It's out in the middle of nowhere, where the Silver River went up under the road. There was a bridge, and I parked the car there, and I went fly fishing, and I worked my way upstream of the river. And, you work the holes, and, I had waders on, and you're working my way. And as I worked my way upstream, all of a sudden I rounded one bend, I was looking at the hole over there, getting ready to cast the fly in, and I looked to my right, and you know what I saw? A bear. A black bear about 12 feet away. Because I had been moving very quietly up the river. And as I looked and saw that black bear about 12 feet away, and I'm half a mile away from anybody else, I know what it feels like to have a heart attack. Because it feels like everything stops. I remember slowly backing away, trying not to disturb the bear. Getting about 50 yards away and then breaking into a quick movement. And then a little later running all out back to the bridge. And then I figured, well, the fish going downstream. So, even though it's not as good, I wanted nothing to do with that bear. You know what, in heaven, doing the same thing, I'm going to ask the bear, where's the good fishing? They're better fishermen than me anyways. And I'm not sure if your pet is exactly in heaven, but I would think so. But there's more incredible animals and things you'd never imagine in heaven. The second question he asked me, he said, well, what do you do in heaven? Really, the ultimate question, and it is actually your brother-in-law, Ralph, who goes to early service. He asked the question, do we get to play golf in heaven? That was his whole thing, He said, what do we do in heaven? He said, well, can we play golf in heaven? And heaven, when there's descriptions of it, it's talking about it on the mountain. There's incredible things and going on, and the views and the spectacular sights and all that's going on. Golf wasn't invented until Scotland about 300 years ago, so I don't know, in biblical times, golf wasn't around. But everything is more incredible in heaven. Sometimes people get the idea that heaven is like church. Remember, a pastor wrote in an article that I read once, he said he was doing a children's sermon just like I do every Sunday, and he asked the kids, how high can you count to? And one little boy raised his hand, and he said 6,751. 6,751? You've counted that high? And the little boy said, yes. He said, why'd you stop there? Church ended. And this little boy, his idea was just counting in church. And it ended, and then he stopped. Heaven is nothing like church. You don't have to listen to me. It's incredible. And you do things like you've never known before. And it makes you think about the best experiences and events of your life and the marvel and awestruck nature. Do you know what? In heaven, they're going to be even better. Do you know, it makes me think of, 2 years ago, me, my wife, and my son, we hiked down into the bottom of the Grand Canyon. We camped down right next to the Colorado River, and then we hiked out the next day. And I remember going down those pathways. On my desk, there's a picture of me and Luke going down sort of the pathways on the Kaibab Trail going down. And all I remember was, it Wish I would have had walking sticks because it was sort of slick with the gravel in the hill. I fell a couple of times. And you know what it's like after you fall on a trail and next to you is a 2,000-foot drop off? Do you know how you walk the rest of the way? We're like this. And it was supposed to take us 4 hours to get down. It took 6.5. The only problem is I had Gatorade for 4 hours. And we didn't make it down. I remember I was getting thirsty. I'm thankful Luke was in good shape and he could give me some of his Gatorade because I was starting to, dehydrate and go a little bad. But every corner and turn we made on that trail, you'd say, wow. I think we're going to explore and experience things like you wouldn't believe. Sort of America's greatest poet, T.S. Eliot, after he became a Christian, there's one poem he wrote about heaven. I have a hard time remembering, but we shall not cease to explore, and we will explore new things. And finally, we'll get to the place where we began, and find it brand new again. What we do in heaven will knock your socks off. It'll amaze you. Far greater than anything you've ever done and experienced here and now. The third question he asked about heaven, he said, well, what do we eat? And he quoted this passage from Revelation 22, which talks about the New Jerusalem, another name for heaven in the scriptures, and talks about the river and the tree of life. And you know what the tree of life has? It has its fruit every month of the year. It's always in season. Do any of you have apple or orange trees or grapefruit or lime or lemon? You know, in Florida, the fruit comes out usually around New Year's. And it's usually you have ripe fruit for 1, maybe 2 months of the year. The other 10 months of the year, what do you get from the tree? Nothing. But in heaven, fruit's always in season. And he said, do we just eat vegetables and fruit? And no. You know what? There's another passage in Isaiah chapter 25, verses 6 through 8. And God says in that passage, on this holy mountain, God will take away the shame of disgrace of all his people. The shroud of death, he will take it away. And on this holy mountain, there'll be the best of meats and the finest of wines. Better than anything here. Burns is a McDonald's in heaven, you know that? And if you don't know, Burns is a steakhouse downtown. I think my wife and I have been there twice in the 15 years we've lived here. But in McDonald's, in heaven, that's a McDonald's. And just think of the best you've ever had. It's even better. The fourth and final question he asked was, he said, well, what do we look like? What's our appearance in that time? Do you know, as I thought about that question, I was reminded of a very gut-wrenching song. Do you remember what happened to Eric Clapton in 1991? Eric Clapton in 1991, he's a famous guitar player, and he has a 49th story penthouse apartment in Manhattan. And he was at the apartment in Manhattan, beautiful overlooking Central Park, but his 5-year-old son Connor was out playing on the balcony, and you know what happened to Connor? He fell off the edge and died. And he wrote the song, Tears in Heaven. And there's certain lines in that song. You're probably familiar, you may not know the song, but it's a very gut-wrenching song. And the line that stuck out in my head that I remember, will you know my name when I see you in heaven? Will you look the same when I see you in heaven? And the question that was asked was, well, what am I going to look like when I'm in heaven? Do I look like I look right now? Will I look like what I look like when I die? Sometimes cancer ravages bodies pretty bad. You get too thin, you don't look your best. Hey, I looked my best a few years ago. Probably most of us. If you're older, anyways. The one thing I think, I'm interesting just rereading all the passages where Jesus appeared to his disciple after Easter. They didn't immediately recognize him. He looked a little different. But when they really looked at him, they could see that's Jesus. That's Jesus. In heaven, we're the people who we are. I like to think I'll look better than I do right now. But I want to resemble him a little bit, Jesus, more and more. The scriptures talk about the image of God, which we had and Adam and Eve and lost in the fall. We have in a broken sense. But in heaven we have that image, that resemblance to Jesus, that changes us. That makes us better in every single way. In all of these questions, I can't give a certain answer because the passages of that scripture that talk about heaven is saying, what we have right here, wait till you see what heaven is better. What tastes good here, wait till you taste what we have in heaven. And that's a promise we live with, we look forward to, and we'll one day experience.